This billionaire isn't able to travel freely and won't even use a cell phone. He's been targeted by governments worldwide for building apps that let over 1 billion people talk privately. Here's how Pavel Durov's pursuit of living freely has cost him his first company, his country, and nearly his own freedom. Pavel saw what a difference living in a free society was like after his family moved to Italy when he was 4.
Back then, I could witness, the deficiencies of the centralized system we had in the Soviet Union.
They moved back to Russia after the Soviet Union fell, but Pavel brought an IBM computer with him.
We were one of the few families in Russia who could actually teach ourselves how to program.
While most kids were getting adjusted to post-Soviet life and getting access to a telephone for the first time, Pavel was building websites, hacking passwords, and questioning authority. By 2006, he had launched a simple social network called VKontakte, or VK for short, to keep in touch with his college classmates after graduation.
I solved my personal problem because I needed a tool to keep in touch with my fellow students.
It was invite-only to start, but rapidly spread to 170 million users across the post-Soviet world.
The most popular social network in Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and a bunch of other post-Soviet countries.
VK was modeled after Facebook, but with radically different values. Instead of raising outside capital, courting advertisers with advanced targeting based on user data, partnering with governments, and building a giant team, Pavel wrote the code, designed the site, and bootstrapped the company himself, along with his brother and 2 co-founders. And by 2011, VK started attracting attention not just from users, but also the Russian government. Realizing he was in for a fight, Pavel took on an outside investor for the first time, raising $800 million at a $2 billion valuation.
The Russian opposition started to use VK to organize large protests in Russia, where almost 500,000 people would go and protest on the main square or some of the main squares of the city.
Despite the police raiding his apartment and VK's offices, Pavel stayed true to his values and refused. He didn't want VK to become a place where people couldn't trust that their data would stay private.
I published the scan of the request, and I also added a photo of a dog in a hoodie with its tongue out and said, "This is my official response to the prosecutor's office when it comes to blocking these channels."
As the intimidation tactics continued, Pavel's 2 co-founders cashed out, selling their equity to another investor in a direct sale at a slightly higher valuation of $2.2 billion. After this, Pavel only owned 12% of the company, with the rest being owned by the investors. This left him with limited influence to make strategic decisions within the company. And with both of his investors having alleged ties to the Kremlin, they began to push Pavel to comply with government demands for user data. In 2013, the FSB demanded that VK hand over data on Ukrainian protesters and opposition figures. Pavel's refusal led to increased scrutiny and pressure from authorities, channeled through his investors, and coincided with other aggressive investor moves against him, including lawsuits and attempts to oust him as CEO. Eventually, Pavel saw no path forward other than to sell his equity in VK for $300 million and flee Russia to live in short-term rentals across Europe. He left his home behind in exchange for his freedom.
I had to make a difficult decision because I was offered basically a choice between 2 suboptimal options.
He also realized that every digital communication channel has government backdoors.
Decided I need to get in touch with my brother and with my team, and I instantly realized there's no way to do that because back at the time, everything was monitored.
So he and his brother quickly built an encrypted messaging platform called Telegram, again building everything in-house, of course. It wasn't a startup, it was a survival mechanism.
Well, my brother had 2 PhDs in maths, super smart. He could, he's an expert in cryptography. He designed the basic principles of the Telegram's encryption.
Pavel thought about setting up the HQ for Telegram in Silicon Valley, but after learning the FBI had tried to pay one of his engineers to install a backdoor into Telegram and being mugged when visiting San Francisco himself, he chose to keep nomading across Europe instead. Within just 2 years, Telegram had tens of millions of users despite a $0 marketing budget. And Pavel's commitment to privacy made Telegram the platform of choice for countries with strong online censorship like Russia, Iran, and China, which only increased the attention on Pavel as well as government demands for data.
China started one of the largest DDoS attacks in the history of internet services against Telegram.
But unlike WhatsApp or Signal, Telegram didn't bend, even when Pavel had to shut down the app in certain countries. After 10 years and over 1 billion users, even European governments started ramping up their attacks in August of 2024.
I was indeed very surprisingly, very unexpectedly detained for 4 days in Paris last year. And I was accused of being complicit in the crimes of people that use Telegram and of people I have never heard about and never communicated with. And just by being the creator of this app.
After spending 4 days in solitary confinement despite not being formally charged with a crime, Pavel, who had become a French citizen after leaving Russia, was told Telegram had ignored judicial requests from the French government, which he disputes.
We've never received a single legally binding legal request coming from France.
Telegram complies with the EU Digital Services Act, a standard channel which provides only IP addresses and phone numbers of criminal suspects when countries request it with justification. Pavel claims France didn't use this standard process that the rest of the EU does until after his arrest.
Why haven't you been following the European law and serving your legal requests in the way prescribed by this law?
Despite being released and not being formally charged with anything, Pavel has remained under France's control almost a year later. He can't travel freely. If he wants to visit his family and home in Dubai, he has to do so under strict conditions from the French government, who say their investigation into Telegram is in the, quote, investigative phase.
My current status is I'm not on trial. It's an investigation intended to find out whether there'll be enough evidence to put this on trial.
Pavel sees this as an intimidation tactic meant to pressure him into weakening Telegram's encryption or giving backdoor access to the French government, though he stressed that no one has actually asked him to do that yet. Instead, he's referenced a now-defeated French bill that would have banned encryption by requiring backdoors in all messaging apps as evidence of their interest in going this direction, and criticized a broader European trend he described as governments pushing laws that quietly erode digital freedoms, often under the guise of, quote, keeping people safe or fighting crime. For over 20 years, Pavel's been building tools to help other people live freely, and ironically, this has put him at odds with governments and put his own freedom at risk. For more videos about founders like Pavel, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.